Wow, technology. I love it. We are live, a couple minutes late. I do apologize for that. This is Coffee with Ralph. It's noon Thursday. And like I say, I do apologize for the delay. Technology is always wonderful. Coffeewithralph.com is a free 15-minute phone call with myself to discuss whatever it is that we need to discuss pertaining to retirement, investments, Medicare, whatever. Today's call is with Tyler Osburn. Let me explain. 2 weeks ago, I was watching the Open Championship, and I watched these professionals on Sunday absolutely butcher their game and just have a heck of a time. And I realized, hey, there's hope for my game. And then last week, I watched the Senior Championship, and they had the same problem. And I thought, man, oh man, there really is hope for my golf game. Well, listen, in the middle of that, there were some commercials that came up run by a local attorney. And our conversation is going to stem around that. We're going to have that with Tyler Osburn of Shank, Boncher, and Ripma. And it's going to be on trust. As you see, the first commercial said that only 10% of America had trusts, and that seems to be epidemic. It seems to be a big problem. And then the other one, which is where I want to start my conversation with Tyler. Tyler, go ahead and click on your video and your audio, is with this commercial. It said that 90% of all trusts fail the owners. So we're going to talk about trusts. And I'm going to lead this in with three different questions. First off, what are trusts? Secondly, what are they designed to do? And third, who needs them? So investigating that and then talking a little bit further about what possibly could be causing 90% of trusts failed and what exactly is meant by that. Hey, Tyler, how you doing today?
I'm doing well, Ralph. Thanks.
Hey, first, let's jump into that simple question. What's a trust?
Yes, a simple question. We'll put that in air quotes. A trust is a separate entity, essentially, that you can use to distribute your estate. You can use it for a myriad of other things as well. One of the popular ways to use a trust is that you can protect assets. Now, there are several different kinds of trusts that work in several different ways. You can have voting trusts. If you have shareholders of a corporation, you can have cottage trusts, which are becoming more and more popular as people buy investment properties in northern Michigan. Pet trusts. I mean, you can set up gun trusts within our revocable trusts. You can set up grandchildren's trusts. I mean, there are many different uses for a trust, but at its core, a trust is a separate entity. It's going to have a separate EIN number. The law is going to consider the trust as an individual, and how you use that individual, i.e. the trust, is really up to you. And that's where we come in with the planning aspect of it, both myself and I know what you do as well, Ralph.
Mm-hmm. So listen, I see there's two types of trusts. I mean, on its core, there's the revocable and the irrevocable. So what is a revocable trust?
So a revocable trust is probably the most common trust. That's if you or I just wanted to set up a trust so that our estate could potentially avoid probate when we pass. And like I said, the trust is a separate entity. In that situation, there's going to be a trustee. But in a revocable trust, the grantor, or the person who makes the trust, or for whom the trust is made, is the primary trustee. So they have the control to either revoke the trust, change the trust, do whatever they want with regard to destroy the trust. They can do that as well. That again, at its essence, is what a revocable trust is. It allows that flexibility.
So what can it do?
What can
a trust do? Yeah, go ahead. I'm gonna leave it there for a minute. What can it do?
What can it do? the big thing that I see that a lot of people want a trust for is like I said, to avoid probate. Now, the issue comes in, and this is probably more leading into the second half of our discussion, but the issue comes in the fact that if your trust is not properly funded, even a revocable trust, you're not going to avoid probate. So if that is your primary purpose in forming a revocable trust, and you don't take the steps necessary to properly fund it, you're not going to fulfill that purpose. But a trust can do a lot of things, and I think, again, probably the most common is just to simplify the process of distributing one's estate is probably the most common trust. But as I mentioned before, trusts can do a lot of things,
Right.
and
Right.
probably a lot more things than we can cover in our time today.
Right, right. Like I said, we may run a little bit long here today because this is kind of one of those topics that can wind just about anywhere we want it to go, you know?
Sure.
So the irrevocable trust would be, is that something that the common man would use?
Yeah, I mean, it is. And I think one of the most common uses for an irrevocable trust or an asset protection trust or those types of things, it's a type of irrevocable trust. The most common use for that, or one of the common uses for that, is to protect someone's estate from a Medicaid look back. I mean, that's really what a lot of people use those for, or should be using them for. That there are a lot of benefits to that, but it has to be done in conjunction with a financial professional and with a legal professional in order to get that planning correct. Because one of the key things about an irrevocable trust is that it is in fact irrevocable. So you lose control once you put your assets in an irrevocable trust. However, those assets at that time, assuming that everything is done correctly and that it's funded correctly, and again, that you're working with professionals in doing it, your assets are protected from creditors or from that look back that we just mentioned.
Okay. So you say you lose control. So who has control of your assets if you don't?
Well, the trustee does. And so it has to be somebody that, as the name implies, that you have a lot of trust in, and that is on the same page as you with regard to your assets. So that again is one of the primary drawbacks, if you will. But again, if done correctly with proper planning, there are a lot of pros to that as well.
Can somebody take an irrevocable trust and live off of the assets?
No.
So
is the short answer.
This is totally giving over control of it. So I'm not benefiting at all from the assets that are in there. Is that correct?
Correct. And
Okay.
The beneficiaries would be third parties. You could not be the beneficiary of that asset protection trust. But again, it's done to protect those assets for the future, most of the time for the future generations.
So they're assets you don't need at all, is really what you're saying.
Well, you can use them. It's if you place your house in an irrevocable trust,
Right.
You can live in it. It's just a matter of where that's going to go. Once you pass, you don't have control over that. You're giving that over to a trustee. Obviously, the documents, the trust itself is going to dictate what happens, and that's why it needs to be drafted correctly and funded correctly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Why do you think that statement, and that's a statistic, that 90% of trusts fail?
If that's an accurate statistic, it doesn't surprise me, I guess. And I think that's probably because there isn't enough planning and work done on the front end. Honestly, and I'll own it, probably by people like me, by attorneys. There's not enough work done on that front end in order to ensure that the trust is first of all properly drafted and executed, but second of all properly funded as well. And this goes for any kind of trust.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're working, well, I guess let me back up. If we're talking about 90% of trusts fail at the time that they're needed, I don't doubt that at all. If you have a trust that was created decades ago and you're now having an attorney or a financial professional stepping in and trying to figure out the effects of this trust yeah, it's probably going to fail at that point. But if you take the steps that you need to take from the beginning and you have those conversations about what exactly you need the trust for, what kind of trust is appropriate, how to fund that trust, and you have assistance in setting it up correctly from the get-go, I think that statistic is probably off. You know, if it takes into account that aspect of it, or breaks out that aspect of it, I would imagine that the number is significantly lower, because I think that's key in all of this, is that you need to have an open and honest dialogue with regard to, and it's not just you as a client coming in, both individuals, the professional and the person coming in to have the trust made, they both need to have that open dialogue with regard to what needs to happen. And if that does take place, that number, I would think, is much, much smaller, and trust would be much more successful when they're needed.
Okay. Yeah. You know, I think I saw a little bit of different view on that, because it's been probably a year, maybe two. I had a client come in and set down his revocable nursing home trust, which he was told would protect his assets from nursing home poverty. And I said, well, hold on. That's what, if I remember my basic law 101, which came from another elder law attorney who's now retired, like yourself, she said that a revocable trust does not take control of the assets out of the person's hands. So therefore, it's not going to solve the problem of spending your money for care. Do you agree with that?
I do agree with that. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And in that case, if that was the concern, which certainly seems to be the case from the title of the trust, again, I have not seen that trust, but that certainly appears to have been what they were trying to accomplish. That there, I don't think there would have been or was that open and honest communication at the beginning of the process, which is why they found themselves in that scenario. But yeah, as a general rule, it has to be irrevocable in order to protect assets. In that case, I would assume they were trying to protect assets from Medicaid, and that's not gonna do it.
Right. That's exactly what it was supposed to do. I still haven't quite figured out, and I'm you know, I'll pose the question. Have you ever sat down with a client who says, hey, listen, when I get sick, I've got Alzheimer's, I have a stroke, I want to go straight to the nursing home. I want the state to pay for my care. You had anybody say that to you?
No,
I don't think so. And, you know, frankly, even if it did work, I'm going to put it out there, and we've got some discussion about this 90% thing. I just find it very disturbing that we would have professionals, whether that's an attorney or a financial professional, telling people to try to hide their money at the last minute for Medicaid. I don't think that works, does it?
No, I mean, it doesn't. That's why the planning piece is so important here, because Medicaid is going to have a 5-year look back.
5 years for a trust.
Yeah. So if you try to quote unquote hide your assets at the last minute, Medicaid is going to find them. I mean, there's no doubt about that, and there's going to be penalties that are going to have to be paid. So again, working with qualified and trusted professionals on the front end is absolutely essential, especially with that kind of planning, because of the fact that you need to time it correctly.
Mm-hmm.
That's super important. So no, you can't just wait until you're getting a diagnosis like that's going to lead you to need care.
Mm-hmm.
To try to do this. It has to be done in advance.
Gotcha. Yeah. Like I said, we're going to run a few minutes over here, because this is one of those conversations that I think it's critical. I don't know how else to say it. I think it's critical because we talk about planning. You and I talk about planning. If Mike was on the call, Mike could be Mike Wittenberry. He talks about planning too, because that's what we have to do. But when I guess the right word is usurped by professionals that say, all that planning is worthless. Don't worry about it. We'll worry about it if it happens. You're telling me that can't work. Wait till if it happens. Do our planning if it happens. Did I hear you right?
Yeah, you need to do the planning before whatever it is,
Right.
happens. I mean,
Yeah.
there's no question about it. And that's just kind of a PSA, I guess, for everybody listening as well. Um, be vigilant. I mean, if you're talking to professionals who are advocating that type of planning, or not having open and honest communication with you, or not meeting with you, just wanting you to sign some documents without actually having a conversation with you about what your desires are, what you want, what you need, you should be thinking long and hard about if that's the person that you want to be with. And this is not at all a plug for me, because there are a lot of attorneys out there who care and who will listen to you and get you what you need. You just have to be vigilant. I guess is the best way to put it.
I think specificity, I can't even say it today. Specificity is right. I mean, they have to tell you what they want. I mean, you can't read minds, just like I can't read minds. But so listen, I'm going to end this with a plug for me. Coffeewithralph.com is an easy way for folks to get a hold of me. Tyler, how can folks get a hold of you?
Our website is schenkboncher.com, schenkboncher.com.
Okay.
All of our contact information is on there. Email is probably the best way to get a hold of me. And my email's on the website. That's going to be the best way.
Awesome. Hey, I thank you for your time today. I think this discussion needs to go a little bit deeper and further so that we can really get to some of these people that are watching and saying, hey, listen, if you're thinking about it, you need to just sit down and review this stuff with somebody that frankly knows what they're doing, right?
Agreed.
All right. Hey, everybody, thank you very much for attending today. I hope you got a lot from Tyler's conversation about revocable and irrevocable and the pet trusts and all these other things that we can name our trusts and we can have them do for us. But the biggest thing is, hey, listen, if you have the question, he gave you the contact information to get a hold of him. You know how to get a hold of me. Listen, we're on YouTube now. So when you go to Coffee with Ralph on YouTube, make sure you subscribe and like my channel, because these videos will be posted on there for future use. Hey, everybody, have a great day. We'll see you next Thursday. Tyler, thank you for your time.